So good afternoon, everyone. I am Marcy Campion from Cargill Pet. I will be your moderator for today. And welcome to our um, pet food training for Pet Food Label Modernization Act. We have quite a few interested pet food professionals out there. We had over 600 people register for this, so please be patient for just a little while longer. We're continuing to let people into the webinar, so thanks for your patience. And just to remind you, this webinar will be recorded, and in a little bit, we will also put the link to that recording into the chat as well. So thank you for your patience. We're just going to give it a few more minutes until Carolyn gives me the okay to get started. And I think the other reminder I should give you is please place yourselves on mute during the webinar. And when we get to the question and answer at the end of the webinar, then you can take yourself off of mute to ask questions. Or you can also put your questions in the chat, and Pat Tovey is going to be monitoring that and helping us to go through those questions at the end. So Carolyn, how are we doing, or do we need to wait a couple more minutes? Are you still letting people in?
I assume we'll be letting people in, but you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you. And again, good afternoon, everyone. Marcy Campion from Cargill Pet Care. Thanks for joining us today in what is a second in the series of trainings around the new labeling guidelines for pet food. Appreciate that you're coming to join us. And just a couple of reminders. One, you are being recorded, so just wanted to let you know that. You should see a little statement at the top of your screen. And second, remember to mute yourself if you haven't already done that. And at the end, when we have question and answers, feel free to unmute yourself to ask a question, or raise your hand and ask a question, or put your question in the chat, and Pat Tovey will be monitoring that. Okay, next slide. I think we can skip this one and go to the next one. Thank you. So before we get started, my first job is to remind you of the Pet Food Institute antitrust policy, which we use and talk about prior to all of our meetings. And what you'll see on the screen is the details of that. But just to summarize, we're here to discuss the Pet Food Label Modernization training, and not to discuss favoring or disfavoring one company or another. And we're not here to talk about topics such as pricing, market share, or business agreements. If anybody begins to talk about these things, please feel free to let me know or Pat Pat Tovino or one of the other speakers as well. And any questions before we get started on that? Okay, thank you. So next slide. So what this is some of the other training sessions, and you may have heard about this. So these are the training sessions that PFI has put together to facilitate the Pet Food Label Modernization educational program. And one of the reasons, there are other places that these programs are being put together, these training programs, such as the one that AFCO has done. And AFCO has worked very closely with some of our PFI members to put those trainings together, and they're very good. The reason that we put our trainings together is the AFCO trainings tend to be heavier on regulatory affairs. And for this one, what we really want to know is how we put these labels together, not necessarily how we regulate them. So that's why we put these trainings together with our folks who have been intimately involved in this and what we need to do and exactly how you need to do that. So, and this is the second seminar in a series of 5. The first one was the introduction and overview of the history of the Pet Food Label Modernization Guidelines. If you want to see a recording of that, that's available on the PFI website. And I will have Pat put that link into the chat once we get going. So you can go back and review that, or when this one is over, you can go back and review this one as well. And with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and get started on the intended use statement for PET, which is our topic today. And so for our agenda, I'd like to introduce our team members who helped put this together. It does take time away from their day job, so we really appreciate their help. So we're going to talk specifically about what the intended use statement is and the language it's used for complete foods, veterinary diets, treats, and mixers. There's a couple of special topics that we'll include, as well as formatting requirements. Formatting requirements are my least favorite thing, but they're very important. So thanks for doing that. And as far as our speakers go, as I said, I'm Marcy Campion. I'm the Global Technical Lead for Cargill. I've been at Cargill for almost 7 years now, but I've been in the pet food industry for over 30 years, working for 5 different companies in a series of different jobs, such as regulatory affairs, product development, etc. Excuse me. And then next we have Carrie Canavan. And Carrie's been with Blue Buffalo for over 6 years, providing regulatory oversight for all the products that Blue Buffalo produces in their portfolio. She's currently the North American regulatory lead, and she manages ingredient and claims reviews, labels, registrations, and government relations. Then we have Lena Lopez, who has been with Wellness Pet Company for over 18 years and is the Director of Regulatory Affairs. Currently, she manages the global regulatory team supporting North America, Asia Pacific, and EMEA. The next batter up will be Bianca Murato, our Senior Regulatory Analyst for J.M. Smucker Company, where she's been for over 7 years and is a Senior Regulatory Analyst. Currently, she provides regulatory support for cat and dog foods, supplements, and treats. And she's also a nutritionist and currently working on her Master's of Jurisprudence in Global Food Law. And then after Bianca, we have Amy Tryon. Amy is the Senior Regulatory Manager for over 9 years with Hills Science Diets. She brings a wealth of experience to these topics because she was one of our key people responsible in negotiating the extended timeline for our labels for this Pet Food Label Modernization Act. So we greatly appreciate her expertise bringing that here today. And then we have Angela Neugebauer, who has been with Smuckers for over 4 years. As a pet regulatory analyst, she ensures regulatory compliance for their cat and dog foods and treats, and her expertise includes food and environmental nutrition. I think I got everybody. So again, our today's topic is the intended use statement, and we will turn it over to Amy Tryon, I believe, is our next speaker. Next slide.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. So intended use. So if you attended the first webinar, you will know that this was kind of introduced. And so high level, just want to kind of talk about what this is, because this will be the first change on the label if you're looking at the front panel first. Intended use, I think, though, we have it in quotes here, and it's part of PF4 in the official publication. I would like you to also consider kind of it's the purpose, right? And it's meant to standardize for consumers and for regulators what the product is for, what life stage, and what purpose. Okay, so part of the you know goal of PFLM was to provide transparency, and so I think this is a really good example of how it's providing transparency in a standardized way. So all pet food manufacturers will be required to execute this in the prescriptive way that is listed. And for any that are just consumers at this point, then you can be looking for this on all pet food packages in the near future. All right, so provides the use of the food, the species, and it should match the nutritional adequacy claim. For those of you not familiar with nutritional adequacy, that is how the product was formulated and for what life stage. Next bullet, I guess. This will be easy to find. Like I said before, part of the goal of PFLM is for it to be consistent and transparent, and it will be on the front panel. In addition, if you are looking at a product that is a bigger bag, you will probably also find this on what we call the butt panel of the packaging as well. It should be repeated, whichever part is facing outward to the consumer. Next bullet. So for all of you that are pet food manufacturers, you will likely have to work closely with your design teams and your creative agencies. Now, this doesn't look like it takes up a lot of, say, real estate on a design, but nonetheless, your current design will have to adapt for this particular requirement. And so you'll have to engage with your design and creative teams. And just like everything else for Pet Food Label Mod, this is required for all pet food and specialty pet food labels. So, my friends Angela, Marcy, Carrie, Bianca, they're all going to get into the special, requirements for the different sections like Marcy had mentioned before. But please know that it's required for all. Go ahead. Yeah. So we can see here where this statement would be expected. Now, it's required in the lower third. So you can see in both of these packages, one's really small and one's a big bag, that it's part of the lower third. Now, they'll go through the details of that, but you can see here that it's very prescriptive in that it's complete food for puppies, complete adult dog food. Before, you may have seen, there's more creative freedom there to kind of list, just dog food, or this is premium dog food, or this is therapeutic premium special fancy dog food or whatever. Now we'll have specific, standardized requirements so that they are all kind of treated the same. All right, so we have here kind of a quick slide on unqualified versus qualified claims. So unqualified means the diet's intended use or purpose is for all animals within that species and no restrictions. So all life stages and sizes of the pet. What that means then is puppy to, mature adults, and small breed, large breed, regular in regards to dog. All life stages, it's all inclusive. Qualified claims means there are specific restrictions for the intended species. So an example of this would be complete food for adult dogs. You could also see restrictions that include maybe two life stages. Maybe you have qualified for puppy and adults. So it's not open to everything, but it's qualified for a certain intended and purpose species, and it will align with our nutritional adequacy statement. All right. Off to Angela.
Thanks, Amy. Complete pet foods are designed to be the sole source of nutrition for a pet, and whether that's for all ages and sizes or for a specific size or life stage. A complete food must fully, safely, and entirely provide all of the nutrients the animal needs to thrive every day without suffering nutrient deficiencies, imbalances, or toxicities for a specific life stage. Next slide. When the intended use of a pet or specialty pet food is a complete food for all life stages and sizes of the animal, the statement complete species food must be used. So examples of this would be complete dog food, complete cat food, etc. And to the right, you'll see my very rudimentary label with an example of the intended use statement for a complete cat food. And as spoken to previously, this is an example of an unqualified claim since this complete food does not have any restrictions around life stage or size like the next two options do. Next slide, please. For pet food products that are intended to be the complete diet for a limited life stage or size of pet or specialty pet, there are two statement options. The first being complete food for blank, where the blank will be filled in with one or more of the following. We have adult species, so adult dog, adult cat, etc. Puppies, kittens, or juvenile species if you are referring to an animal other than a cat or dog. Puppies less than 70 pounds as an adult, or dogs except for puppies more than 70 pounds as an adult. And to the left, you'll see an example of a complete food for adult dogs. And then to the right, you'll see a complete food for puppies less than 70 pounds as an adult. Next slide, please. The second option for labeling a complete food for a limited life stage is complete blank food, where the blank in this instance will be filled in with one or more of the following. Again, we have adult species, adult dog, adult cat, puppy, kitten, or juvenile, puppy less than 70 pounds as an adult, or dog except for puppies more than 70 pounds as an adult. And to the left, you'll see an example of a complete adult dog food intended use statement there circled in the yellow. And to the right is an example of a complete adult cat food. Next slide, please. And Marcy Campion is going to take it away.
Marcy, you're on mute, Marcy.
Thank you. Apologize for that. So now we're going to talk about the intended use statement for veterinary diets. So the prescriptive claim, how it's stated, is much simpler than some of the previous examples. It basically says veterinary diet for insert species. So veterinary diet for dog or cat. And these are products that are intended to be used under veterinary supervision and in accordance with regulation PF4D, which will give you more specifics around veterinary diets. Next slide. Just to call out, the dog on the left is my dog Marco, who is on a veterinary diet, not one of the examples shown, but we sometimes also refer to these as therapeutic diets. And while that's fine to refer to them as therapeutic diets, when you put the language on the front for the intended use statement, it does have to read veterinary diet for dogs or veterinary diet for cats. So next slide. And I'll turn it over to Carrie.
Thank you. So I'll be focusing on the intended use statements for treats and food mixers. These categories bring structure and clarity for these types of offerings for the consumer. Whereas treats aren't a new category, or you can go to the next slide. Where treats aren't a new category or a definition within the new regulations, the regulations do help provide more clarity on how these products should be defined. Treats are meant for enjoyment, trainings, or entertainment, not to be a complete food or nutritional supplement. Requirements for these intended use statements include indicating the product is a treat and for whom the product is for. If the product is for all life stages, this is indicated by simply including cat or dog, or if the product is for a specific life stage, we identify the life stage such as adult, puppy, or kitten. Next slide. There's always been a lot of confusion among industry and regulators when it came to food mixers. There have been similar offerings across the industry that have many different names, and because of this, consumers were unsure of the intention of these products. Was it a treat? Was it a complete food? So this grouping defines the regulations to describe this type of offering. It provides structure and clarity on its use and nutritional adequacy. The point is to make sure consumers know this is not a complete diet and cannot be used as single source nutrition. Food mixers are intended to top, accompany, or contribute to a complete diet, not to be a complete food. Requirements for the intended use include indicating the product is a food mixer and for whom the product is for. If the product is for all life stages, this is indicated by simply including cat or dog, or if the product is for all life stages, we identify the life stage such as adult, puppy, or kitten. I'd also like to highlight that although food mixer is the required verbatim statement, other places on the package can call it a topper, complement, or whatever industry chose as their product name prior to these regulations. Next slide. There have been several scenarios that have come up in conversation about what to do when the product has multiple intended uses. Some of these scenarios include treats that are also complete, food mixers that are also complete, treats that are also food mixers, and complete foods that are also food mixers. To determine the correct intended use statement, we first have to understand the main use of the product. Once we determine the main use, other marketing claims can call out uses for that product. It's important to know that the intended use statement, nutritional adequacy statement, and feeding guidelines all must match, so they all have to tell the same story. Next slide. When additional claims are present, we must be mindful of additional requirements. For example, treats and food mixers labeled as complete and balanced must also include adequate feeding directions. Even if a treat or food mixer is complete and balanced, the feeding directions must take into account the nutritional adequacy of the product. For example, that treat or food mixer might only take up a portion of the pet's diet. Despite what our pets think, we can't be feeding only treats. Next slide, please. So in summary, complete, veterinary diet, treat, and food mixer are all acceptable intended use statements. Any other terms, including but not limited to complete and balanced, therapeutic diet, snack, topper, accompaniment, or complement are all not allowed in the intended use statement. The limited variation is intended to limit consumer confusion. And I will now pass this on to Bianca for formatting.
Thank you, Carrie. Now we will talk about Marcy's favorite topic, the formatting requirements of the intended use statement. The intended use statement is required to be shown on the lower 30% of the principal display panel and any alternate display panels if present. However, this is not required if the PDP is 5 square inches or less. It also must be shown in lines generally parallel to the base in which the package rests. This is usually in line with the net quantity statement. Next slide, please. There are also several formatting requirements that are in relation to the net quantity statement. The font size of the intended use statement must be at least as large as the net quantity statement. In this example, you can see that the net quantity statement and intended use statement are both 0.19. It would also be permissible if the intended use statement were larger. The intended use statement must also appear in the same color, style, and be on the same background color as the net quantity statement. In this example, both the net quantity statement and intended use statements are shown in white. They use the same style of font, and they're both on a blue background. Next slide, please. Thank you. There also must be adequate clear space around the intended use statement. The statement must be separated by a space above and below from other label information. That is at least the height of the letter N in net weight. So in this example, you can see that the height of the letter N is 0.19, and the space between the label information above is 0.46 inches, which is obviously greater than 0.19. Next slide, please. There also must be clear space to the left and right of the intended use statement. It must be separated from other label information to the left and right of it by a space at least twice the width of the letter N in net weight. In this example, you can see the width of the letter N is 0.14, and the space between the intended use statement and the P pod is 0.59, which is greater than 2 times the width of the letter N. Next slide, please. Okay, so now to make sure everyone is still awake, what about the intended use statement is shown correctly? Not sure if there should be a poll that pops up.
It's in the chat.
Visible on the screen. Please
Yep.
respond.
Okay, I see it in the chat. Okay, I can't really see the poll, but the answer is that it's shown on the lower 30% of the PDP. It's a different color than the net quantity statement, so that's not correct, and it's also a smaller text size. So next slide, please. There's one more pop quiz. So in this example, what is incorrect about the intended use statement? Also can't see if there's a poll, but the answer is that it's shown on a different background color. So that is all for the formatting. I will hand it back to Marcy.
And I want to tell Bianca, thank you. Now formatting happens to be my favorite topic because she made it so easy. So thank you, Bianca. That was great. So just want to do a bit of a quick advertisement here before we get to the Q&A. This was the second of the educational series on pet food label modernization. There is a third and a fourth and a fifth coming. The third one will be on pet nutrition facts box, which is a little bit complex. So I would highly suggest signing up for this. And it's going to be on Wednesday, September 11th at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And you can sign up for this on the Pet Food Institute website. And I don't think I'm forgetting anything else. So thank you for that. And with that, we're going to move on to questions. So feel free to unmute yourself or to raise your hand or to put a question in the chat. And Pat Toby is going to be our moderator for the questions. So Pat, I think you may already have one in the chat to kick us off with.
Yep, I am all set. Nice job, everyone. I do want to say, Bianca, from the poll results I saw, 100% of the participants got your first question right. So you did a good job. I've got a few questions here, and the first one I'll jump into. It appeared in the chat. I have another one that we might go to in a minute, but essentially, for complete foods, complete and balanced foods, what about specific breed diets? For example, can the label say complete adult poodle food? And who wants to take that one on?
So Pat, I can answer that. I can't see the questions in the chat, so I'm just listening to how you ask them. So no, as we stated in the beginning, for intended use and purpose statements, they're very prescriptive, in the verbiage that's provided to you in the AAFCO official publication is what has to be used. So you can say that somewhere else on your package as a claim, but for this intended use statement, it must be listed as it is in the AAFCO publication.
Great. Thanks, Amy. And I'll I will move on. I have a second one here, and I will post this myself into the chat. And putting a question in the chat is a good way to do this. I guess it's a little bit of a two-parter. The main question that we'd like to answer is, what is the difference between intended use and the purpose statement that we see somewhere? And I think kind of the follow-up to that is, can anyone explain why the term intended use was reported as being a conflict for state and federal statutes during the recent AFCO meeting? Who wants to take that one on? And I will get that posted into the chat as well.
I don't see anyone volunteering. That one's kind of tricky, and I think that's one that is at recent, comments have been brought up that kind of give clarity to a different area or different industry, right? And so with the same verbiage. So it's still, we still should be looking at this as the purpose and the use for this but probably not focus so much on intended use in this industry versus another. But I do know that that's something that was brought up at the recent AFCO meeting, and I believe that it will have some further discussion. But for now, because this is the way that is written in the official publication, this is the way our training is being presented. I don't know if that answered the question, but if not, I guess someone can reach out to me personally too.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer, and it tracks well with how I understand it, and purpose statements showing up in the model bill. I know that it looks like Angel has something to add to that as well.
Yeah, this is Angel Thompson, and Amy, along with most of the people who are speaking and several other folks that are on this line, have been intimately involved in these regulation changes since the very beginning and continuing on. So everybody's done a lot of work. Intended use is, as Amy said, it's a bit complicated and it's nuanced. And in Pat's second part of Pat's question, he was talking about an issue that was raised at the recent AFCO meetings last week towards the end of the Pet Food Committee. And I checked with the folks of NASC because they've used the term animal supplements, obviously in their title, National Animal Supplements Council. And at the meeting, we had a chance to talk to the representative from National Animal Supplements Council, one of them, and then also some regulators. And then I followed up with National Animal Supplements Council Representative Jennifer Gornett to look at, just as Amy said, some of this terminology. What we have now in pet food is food supplement. So you need to think about whether or not you have a food or not. And if you have a food, then food supplement will be the way that your product will go. What National Animal Supplements Council, NASC, is using now as their term to distinguish from that is either animal health supplement or just health supplement, and then the species. So that's the distinction, and that was part of what was the question that was raised. I mean, there probably will be further discussions between folks, but as like I said, as Amy said, it's because of some of the other uses of the term, and it actually brings out why intended use is so important, and why we're using that intentionally. It's part of the regulations, not just in pet food, but also federal. So hopefully that's helpful. Thanks.
I think that was really helpful, Angel. And you might, while you're while you're on the line and unmiked, the next question, there's another question in the chat that might be more up your line as well. The question is, I have a dental product. How do I figure out what should be on the principal display panel?
Yeah, this question feeds right into right along with the question, the prior question. So it's great to have the flow. This again was raised at the Pet Food Committee last week, And in talking about it and thinking about it and discussing it, the first question really to ask yourself when you're trying, where you and your company are trying, and your marketing folks are trying to determine, what do I put on for intended use? Well, the first question really is, do you have a food or do you have a drug? If you have a food, then you're limited to those 8 choices that the other folks on this webinar have gone through. So if you have a food, do you have, possibly if you have something with dental claims, then you could choose maybe a dental treat. And if it's a dental treat, you can put other marketing around it. You can put dental claims on it. But the intended use, in order to be clear, is it something that's used either for entertainment or for occasional feeding. And then the last phrase in the regulation says, or other purposes. So this would probably, this falls under, if your company determines that you have a food, dental or dog treat, but then the other labeling would be highlighting the dental claims, as long as those dental claims are within the bounds of food claims. So food claims, food provides taste, aroma, and nutritive value. So you want to make sure you're not making drug claims, because that would put you in a different category. So hopefully that's a helpful clarification. And again, that came from last week at the Pet Food Committee. And if anybody
Good.
has a question.
Oh.
No.
No, that was a good, thoughtful, and thorough answer, as always, Angel. So we definitely appreciate it. I don't see any more showing up into the chat, although I do, one question did come to me. I can post this one again. It is, I think the answer, perhaps we've heard it a little bit with the first question that we received about the species, but the question just simply, currently the label has dog food on it. Is that enough? And here it will probably help just to post it in there, but I think that is the question there, and I think that the answer is similar to the first one that you gave, Amy. My current label has, I think maybe you still can't see it. My current label has dog food. Is that enough?
So currently it's okay because we're in implementation and we're in a discretionary period. But at the end of the PFLM discretionary period in December 2029, no, that statement will need to be updated to include the life stage or the qualified or unqualified claim and what it's been formulated for. But again, there's lots of resources out there. So if anybody needs help, you know, the folks on this line at PFI will be willing to connect you with folks to help support.
Awesome. And so I think I did, before I hand it over, then Marcy. Oh,
hey
I think
Pat,
there's
I've
another
added a question.
And there was one before Angel's too.
yes. So I'll just simply, there's a question in the chat, and I'll handle this one. I think it looks as it, who will act as a label police? I assume we're saying who is going to regulate the labels as that goes forward. And I think more than likely, I think we will have a chance to talk about this a little bit more in the future. So I'll start out with saying that one, but currently we are working through a process and it really goes, I think, beyond this particular webinar, but we're working on a process in order to get, for one thing, each of the 50 states to adopt, however they may need to do it in their particular state, whether it's a legislative process or whether they can do it administratively or regulatorily somehow, to continue where the states would continue to review labels, pre-market approval. PFI is working on other means to address that. And I think getting much into that would probably go beyond what we're doing today, but definitely appreciate the question. And then, Angel, you have a question in the chat as well.
I do. And hi, everybody again. I've asked Pam if she can, Pam Kaufman from Royal Canin, if she can speak to the consumer research that AFCO done. This project was unprecedented in AFCO's history because this was the first time that they did consumer testing. So there was actually several focus groups, but Pam, you were right in the heart of doing this consumer testing around the intended use, which is the topic of today. So if you could talk about that, that would be really helpful, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, sure. So the testing that was run was really to look at an existing label and then compare it to one that had the statement with the verbatims that we were entertaining. And the verbatims that we were entertaining came back with a lot of really good feedback, number one. But secondly, it was more easily for consumers to understand quickly which product would be appropriate for their dog or their cat. And it was consistent. So every time we would ask for a different type of label. So we looked at cat food, canned food, and then we looked at cat dry food. We did dog can and dog dry. And the results came back with, I think it was greater than 80, I want to say it was 86%. So it was significantly improved over the original that just had said dog food. Because what we were seeing is that the consumers are not actually looking at the back side of the label, double checking the feeding instructions or the AFCO statement so much. The front of PAC-Q was extremely helpful to them. Any questions specifically about that? I'm happy to answer. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Pat or Marcy.
Pat, do you have any more questions or in the chat or?
There are no more questions in the chat. I do appreciate the good questions we received as well as the answers from our crew. So thank you. But I think at this point, Marcy, I'll turn it back.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell all of the attendees, thank you for attending. Thank you for the good questions and your interest. And remember to sign up for the next training, which will be Wednesday, September 11th at 3 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time on the Pet Nutrition Facts Box. And again, if you think of another question, you can send it in on this chat, and I think we'll still see it on this chat. Okay, thanks all, and have a great week. And big thanks to the team that helped put all this together. Really appreciate it. Take care.